In a riverside village in Thailand, people believe some deaths refuse to end. Some spirits do not leave, they stay behind to attend their own funeral. The story you are about to hear is not about a ghost that wants to kill. It is about a dead man who wants to be remembered, and to reclaim what was taken from him. If, while listening, you feel someone standing behind you, don't turn around. Chapter 1: The Black and White Portrait. People in Ban Klong village share a warning that is whispered. Never spoken loudly. Never stare too long at a funeral portrait after midnight. Somchai's funeral took place in a wooden riverside house that smelled of incense, wet soil, and candle wax. The accident had happened only hours earlier. His body arrived close to midnight, wrapped in white cloth, carried by men who refused to look at his face. They set the coffin down gently, as if afraid he might wake if disturbed. His wife, Molly, placed a black and white portrait of him above the temporary altar. It was an old photograph taken years ago. In it, Somchai should have been smiling. Everyone remembered that day, a festival, loud music, sunlight on the river, yet in the portrait he wasn't smiling at all. He was staring. Not at the camera. Through it. His eyes looked fixed on something behind the viewer. Something no one else could see. Even the village elders shifted uncomfortably when they noticed it. One woman muttered a prayer under her breath and refused to sit facing the portrait. As the night deepened, the air grew thick and unmoving. The candles burned unevenly. Their flames leaned sideways without wind, casting shadows that twitched along the walls like nervous insects. Every time someone glanced at the portrait, they felt watched in return. It was not imagination. The sensation pressed against the skin, heavy and undeniable. Around 2 in the morning, the incense sticks burned out all at once. Not one by one. All together. The smoke curled upward and formed a dark knot in the air before dissolving. The room fell silent. Even the insects outside stopped singing. In that silence, the portrait seemed sharper, closer. Somchai's eyes looked wet, reflective, almost alive. A grandmother sitting near the altar began trembling. Her voice cracked when she spoke. He hasn't left. No one asked what she meant. They all understood. The coffin creaked softly. Just once. But in a quiet house full of mourners pretending to sleep, that single sound traveled like a knife through the room. Several people opened their eyes. No one moved. No one dared approach. The portrait continued to stare. Patient. Waiting. As if the man inside the frame was attending his own funeral. Watching every breath. Counting every heartbeat. Making sure he had not been forgotten. And somewhere deep in the house, water dripped. Slow. Measured. Like footsteps walking back home. Chapter 2: The Uninvited Guest. At 3 in the morning, grief becomes something else. It stops being loud. It stops crying. It begins to listen. The mourners in the house were no longer awake in the ordinary sense. They drifted in that fragile space between sleep and fear, where every sound grows teeth. The candles had burned low, their wax pooling like pale flesh around the altar. The portrait still watched the room. No one dared cover it. That was when the door opened. It did not slam. It did not creak. It simply opened. The night air rolled in, damp and river cold. A man stepped across the threshold. His clothes were formal: white shirt, black trousers, the kind worn at funerals. His hair hung wet against his forehead as if he had walked a long distance through rain. Yet outside the sky was clear. No one greeted him. No one remembered seeing his face clearly afterward. Every witness described the same problem. Their eyes slid away from it, like trying to read a word that refused to stay still. The man walked slowly to the back of the room and sat in the last chair. He did not bow to the altar. He did not look at the coffin. He only sat, hands resting on his knees, water dripping quietly from his sleeves onto the wooden floor. Drip. 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 The sound threaded into everyone's dreams. A child woke first. Little Arun rubbed his eyes and sat up, staring directly at the stranger. Children do not carry the same protections adults build around themselves. They see before they understand fear. His voice cut through the room. Uncle Somchai is here. The words landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Several adults jerked awake. A woman covered the boy's mouth, whispering fiercely for him to be quiet. But it was too late. The air had already changed. The temperature fell sharply. Breath fogged in front of their lips. Slowly, unwillingly, heads turned toward the last chair. The man was still sitting there. And now everyone knew why no one could see his face. Because they already had. On the altar. In the black and white portrait. A low murmur spread through the room. Someone began chanting a prayer, voice shaking so hard the words tangled together. The stranger did not react. He sat perfectly still, as if he had always belonged there, another mourner paying respects. Except for one detail. His eyes were opened too wide. And he was staring at his own coffin. The dripping stopped. Silence swelled until it hurt. Then, from inside the coffin, came a hollow thud. Not loud. Not violent. Just a gentle knock from within. The uninvited guest tilted his head, listening. And for the first time, he smiled.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3: The Empty Coffin. No one breathed after the knock. The sound did not echo. It did not repeat. It simply settled into the room and stayed there, heavy as wet cloth. Every mourner stared at the coffin, waiting for someone else to move first. Fear has a way of turning adults into statues. The uninvited guest remained seated, watching. A man named Prossert finally stood. His knees shook so violently the chair behind him scraped the floor. The noise felt wrong, disrespectful, like shouting in a temple. He whispered an apology to the altar and stepped forward. Each step toward the coffin made the air thicker, harder to push through. The candles near the altar dimmed as he passed, their flames shrinking as if something invisible leaned over them. When Prossert reached the coffin, his hands hovered above the lid. He did not want to touch it. The wood looked swollen, darkened by moisture that hadn't been there before. Behind him, someone began crying softly. "Open it," the grandmother whispered, "before he does." No one asked who he was. Prossert lifted the lid. It came away too easily. Inside the coffin was nothing. No body. No cloth. No pillow. Only a hollow space breathing out a cold, earthy smell, the scent of freshly turned soil and river mud. The interior wood was damp, streaked with dark handprints smeared along the sides as if someone had pushed upward from within. A woman screamed. The sound snapped the room awake. Several people stumbled backward, knocking into chairs. Molly rushed forward and looked inside. For a moment she didn't react. Her face emptied. Then she made a sound no one there would ever forget. A broken animal noise torn from somewhere deeper than grief. "He was here," she whispered. "He was right here." The uninvited guest stood. Chairs scraped as people scrambled away from him. He walked toward the coffin slowly, water pooling beneath his bare feet now. No one had noticed when his shoes disappeared. The wet footprints he left behind were thick with mud. He looked down into the empty space. His shoulders relaxed, like a man returning home after a long journey. Then he turned toward the mourners. Every candle went out. The darkness was instant and complete. Not the darkness of night, this was thicker. A blindfold pressed against the eyes. In it, people heard movement, wet footsteps circling the room, the faint rustle of cloth, something breathing too close to their ears. A voice spoke from everywhere at once. "I was buried wrong." When the candles flared back to life, the guest was gone. The coffin was still empty. But the portrait above the altar had changed. Somchai was smiling now. And his lips were wet. Chapter 4: The Man Standing Behind You. After the candles returned, no one trusted the light anymore. Flame was supposed to protect the living. It was supposed to keep spirits at the edge of the room, pressed back into corners and shadows. Yet the house felt more crowded than before. The air carried the unmistakable sensation of being occupied, not by movement, not by sound, but by presence. People began sitting with their backs against the walls. No one wanted empty space behind them. The coffin remained open. The hollow inside seemed deeper now, darker than the wood should allow, like a mouth that forgot how to close. Molly knelt beside it without blinking. Her eyes were red but dry. Fear had passed through her and left something colder in its place. The first person to feel it was a young cousin named Dara. She stood to stretch her legs and immediately froze. Every hair on her arms lifted. Someone was standing directly behind her, so close she could feel breath sliding across the back of her neck. It was damp and icy, carrying the smell of river water and rot. She didn't turn around. Her body refused. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. Only breathing. Slow, patient. The others watched Dara's face drain of color. They saw her shoulders tense, saw her fingers curl into her palms. They knew, without asking, that she was not alone. "Come here," someone urged. "Walk forward." Dara tried. Her legs shook. Each step felt resisted, as if she were dragging an invisible weight. The breathing followed her. When she reached the group, she spun around with a strangled cry. Nothing stood behind her, but on the wooden floor were wet footprints. They stopped exactly where she had been standing. A murmur rippled through the room. Several people began praying aloud, voices overlapping in panic. The grandmother clutched her beads so tightly her knuckles turned white. "He's choosing where to stand," she said. The words spread a deeper fear than the footprints, because everyone understood the meaning. He was walking among them. From that moment on, no one dared face away from the altar. They kept their eyes forward, staring at the portrait, at the empty coffin, at the space where the guest had stood. Muscles cramped, eyes burned. Still they refused to look behind themselves. Hours passed like that. Then a man named Kittafong broke. "I can't," he muttered. "There's nothing there." He laughed weakly and turned around. The laugh died in his throat. His body locked upright, rigid as carved wood. His pupils swallowed his eyes. Slowly, his lips parted. "He's right here," he whispered. Everyone saw it happen. The air behind him bent. Not visibly, not in a way the eye could follow, but reality seemed to dent inward. Like fabric pressed by an unseen hand. Kittafong's head tilted slightly, as if someone rested their chin on his shoulder. His breath came out in white fog. A second breath overlapped it. Not his. The candles flickered violently. Shadows twisted up the walls. For a heartbeat, reflected in the black glass of the portrait frame, they saw a second figure standing behind him, tall, dripping, smiling. Then Kittafong collapsed. When he hit the floor, the presence vanished. But the cold spot where it had stood remained, spreading slowly across the wood like spilled water. No one stepped into it. They formed a circle around the empty chill, staring at the space reserved for a man who refused to leave. And somewhere in the house, footsteps continued walking, looking, choosing the next back to stand behind.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5: The Whisper Inside the Ear. By the time the clock approached dawn, the house no longer felt like a place for the living. It felt like a waiting room. No one spoke unless necessary. Words seemed dangerous, as if sound itself could attract attention. The mourners sat packed tightly together, shoulders touching, afraid of leaving even a finger's width of empty space between them. The cold patch on the floor had faded, but the memory of it lingered like a stain in their minds. That was when the whispering began. At first it was mistaken for wind. A thin thread of sound brushing past the ear, too soft to understand. People shifted uncomfortably, rubbing their necks. The whispers did not come from one direction. They slipped from everywhere at once, weaving through the room like invisible smoke. Then the words formed. "I'm still here." A man clamped his hands over his ears. It didn't help. The voice was inside his head. More whispers followed, overlapping, crawling through skulls and behind eyes. "They buried me wrong. It's dark. Why won't you answer?" Several mourners cried out at the same time. The whispers were not identical, yet everyone understood them. The voice belonged to Somchai, unmistakable, intimate. It spoke the way memory speaks, directly, without passing through the air. The old grandmother fell to her knees. "He's trapped," she sobbed. "He's knocking from the other side." Across the room, a middle-aged man named Chandan began shaking violently. He stared at nothing, mouth hanging open. Tears streamed down his face as if pulled out by invisible hands. "He's talking to me," Chandan gasped. "He's right next to me." The others recoiled. No one wanted to stand near him. "What is he saying?" Molly whispered. Chandan's lips trembled. He says he never left the coffin." A collective chill swept the room. Everyone turned toward the empty box. For a moment, just a moment, they thought they saw movement inside it. The darkness shifted like something breathing beneath water. The whispers grew louder. Not in volume, in closeness. Each person felt a mouth pressed against their ear, lips brushing skin that suddenly felt too thin to protect them. The smell of river mud filled their noses. Cold breath slid into their lungs when they inhaled. "Don't close it," the voice begged. "Don't close it again." Molly stumbled backward, clutching her head. The portrait above the altar rattled softly against the wall. Sanchai's smiling face seemed brighter now, teeth glistening as if wet. Someone screamed for the monks. Someone else screamed to burn the house. The whispers rose into a chorus, desperate and broken. "I was awake. I was awake. I was awake." Chandan collapsed, sobbing. When the whispers finally stopped, the silence that followed was worse. It rang in their ears like a wound. No one moved. No one dared look at the coffin. Because they all understood what the voice had confessed. And the house understood it too. The wooden walls creaked inward, as if listening. Chapter 6: The Mirror Without a Reflection. Dawn never truly arrived. The sky outside the riverside house turned pale, but the light that entered through the windows felt thin and sickly, like illumination filtered through dirty water. Inside, the air remained heavy with night. The mourners looked older than they had hours before. Faces hollow, eyes rimmed in gray. No one believed mourning meant safety anymore. They moved carefully, whispering, avoiding sudden gestures. Even grief had quieted into something cautious. Near the back of the house hung a narrow mirror above a small basin used for washing hands during the ceremony. It was old glass, slightly warped, the silver backing peeling at the edges. No one had paid attention to it until Molly approached to splash water on her face. Her hands shook as she lifted the bowl. The water rippled more than it should have, trembling as if disturbed by an unseen breath. She leaned forward and let the water touch her skin. It was icy. When she raised her head, she saw herself. Pale, exhausted, older. And Sanchai standing directly behind her. Her body locked. In the mirror, he was close enough that his chin almost touched her shoulder. His clothes dripped steadily, soaking the floor that did not move. His skin had the gray tint of river clay, but his eyes were clear, awake, hurt. Molly spun around. Nothing. The space behind her was empty. The mourners watched her stumble, confused. Someone asked what was wrong. She couldn't answer. Her throat refused to work. Slowly, with dread thick as syrup in her veins, she looked back at the mirror. Sanchai was still there. This time he was smiling. Not the soft smile from the altered portrait. This was wider, strained, a smile stretched over terror. Water spilled from his mouth, running down his chin in thin streams. Molly screamed and fell backward. The bowl shattered across the floor. Everyone rushed toward her, but several stopped short when they accidentally caught their own reflections. Each of them stood alone. Except the mirror did not agree. In the glass, shapes flickered behind them, not always Sanchai. Sometimes just a shadow leaning too close. Sometimes a pair of pale hands hovering above a shoulder. The reflections lagged half a second behind their real movements, like the mirror was remembering a different version of the room. The grandmother began chanting frantically. "Don't look. Mirrors or doors, don't invite him through." But it was too late. The surface of the glass rippled like disturbed water. Sanchai's reflection lifted a hand. His fingers pressed flat against the inside of the mirror. A wet handprint bloomed outward. On the real side, the room erupted in panic. Someone threw a cloth over the mirror, but the fabric darkened instantly. Soaked from beneath, water dripped onto the floor. The smell of the river flooded the house. From behind the covered glass came a slow, patient tapping. Molly curled into herself, sobbing. "He found a way back," she whispered. "He knows where we are." The tapping continued. Measured. Gentle. Like a man politely asking to be let inside.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7: The Child Who Told the Truth. Children are the first to understand when adults lie to themselves. While the mourners argued in hushed voices about monks, rituals, And curses. Little Arun sat quietly near the altar, swinging his legs. No one noticed him at first. Adults rarely look down when fear is taller than they are. He was staring at the last chair in the room. The chair no one touched. The chair that still carried a faint dark stain where water had pooled earlier in the night. Arun tilted his head as if listening to someone speak. Then he nodded. "Yes," he said softly. The conversation stopped. Every adult turned toward him. Molly knelt in front of the boy, forcing a gentle smile that trembled at the edges. "Who are you talking to?" Arun pointed. "Not at the coffin. Not at the mirror. At the chair. Uncle Samchai," he said matter-of-factly. "He says he's sitting wrong." The room shrank. Several people backed away without realizing they were moving. The chair looked unchanged, ordinary, harmless, yet the air around it felt compressed, as if something invisible occupied the space and refused to be disturbed. "What do you mean, wrong?" Molly whispered. Arun frowned, listening again. "He says," the boy's voice lowered, "this is where guests sit. He's not a guest." A ripple of horror passed through the mourners. The grandmother grabbed a bottle of ritual alcohol and splashed it onto the floor between the chair and the altar. The liquid spread in a trembling line. Arun watched it with fascination. "He says you forgot his place," the child added. The coffin creaked. Everyone flinched. The empty interior seemed darker than before. The darkness inside it looked organized now, shaped, like something folding itself carefully into the space where a body should be. Arun slid off his seat and walked toward the chair. "No," several voices shouted at once. But children move faster than fear. He stopped directly in front of the empty seat and smiled politely, the way he had been taught to greet elders. "You can sit there," Arun said, pointing to the coffin. The temperature dropped. The candles bent inward, flames leaning toward the boy as if drawn by a breath no one else felt. The stain on the chair spread, fresh water seeping through the wood. For a moment, a single, unbearable moment, the outline of a seated figure dented the air. The chair creaked under invisible weight. Arun stepped back calmly. "He's happy now," he announced. The coffin lid slammed shut. No one touched it. The sound cracked through the house like thunder. Several mourners fell to their knees. The grandmother sobbed in relief and terror at once. Arun returned to Molly and tugged her sleeve. "He says thank you," the boy whispered. Molly didn't ask how he knew. Because at that exact moment, from inside the sealed coffin, came a gentle knock. Not desperate, not angry, grateful. And the house, for the first time since midnight, exhaled. But no one mistook it for peace. It was only acceptance. Samchai was no longer visiting. He had taken his seat. Chapter 8: The Shadow That Didn't Belong to Light. For a short while after the coffin closed, the house grew quiet. Not safe. Just quiet in the way a storm pauses to breathe. The mourners didn't relax. They sat rigid, listening for the next sound. The next sign that the boundary between the living and the dead was still tearing open. Even the river outside had gone silent. No insects, no birds. The world felt suspended, like a painting waiting for something to move. Then someone noticed the wall. At first it was only a feeling, the sensation of being watched from the side. A woman turned her head slowly, expecting to see another mourner. Instead she saw a shadow. It stretched across the wooden wall near the altar. Long and thin, shadows were everywhere in a candlelit room. But this one was wrong. It didn't connect to any body. It stood alone, upright, shaped like a man sitting in the last chair. The woman blinked, hoping her eyes would correct themselves. The shadow remained. Her breath hitched. She reached for the arm of the person beside her and pointed with trembling fingers. One by one, heads turned. The room filled with a thick, choking silence as everyone understood what they were seeing. The shadow sat exactly where the invisible weight had pressed into the chair. But the chair itself was empty. The candles flickered, flames dancing wildly. Every other shadow in the room trembled with them, stretching, shrinking, shivering along the walls. Except that one. It did not move. It stayed perfectly still, as if it belonged to a different light. Someone whispered a prayer. Another person began crying quietly. The grandmother refused to look at it, pressing her forehead to the floor. Molly stared openly, her face drained of resistance. The shadow tilted its head. The movement was small, precise, and impossible. A collective gasp swept the room. Several mourners scrambled backward, chairs toppling. The shadow continued to move slowly, its outline bending like a living spine. It leaned forward, as if studying the coffin. The coffin answered. A soft knock came from inside. The shadow leaned back again, satisfied. The candles dimmed together, their flames shrinking to thin blue threads. The room darkened, and the shadow grew thicker, darker, more solid. For a heartbeat it looked less like absence and more like substance, a silhouette filled with night. Then it stood. The motion rippled across the wall without sound. Everyone felt it rise. The air pressure changed, ears popped. A cold wind swept through the house, though the doors were closed. The shadow took one step away from the chair. And another. It walked across the wall without touching the floor, gliding toward the altar. When it reached the portrait, it stopped. Somchai's smiling face glistened in the candlelight. The shadow raised an arm. Its hand merged with the portrait. The glass fogged instantly, as if breathed on from inside. A wet palm print appeared over Somchai's face. Then the shadow collapsed flat and vanished. The candles brightened again. The wall was empty, but the palm print remained on the portrait, slowly dripping downward like ink mixed with water. No one approached to wipe it away. They understood instinctively. That mark was proof. Somchai was no longer trapped between places. He was learning the house, learning how to move. And somewhere inside the coffin, something shifted, settling in, getting comfortable, like a man preparing to stay a very long time.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9: The Touch That Was Colder Than Death. The house had stopped pretending to be a house. It no longer held warmth, memory, or comfort. It held only distance, a strange emotional gap between people sitting shoulder to shoulder. No one spoke above a whisper. Even breathing felt intrusive. Every sound seemed to belong to someone else listening from nearby. The coffin sat sealed. Too quiet. Too patient. Molly had not moved from her place near the altar. Her eyes remained fixed on the lid, as if she expected it to rise at any moment. Fear had sharpened her attention into something painful. She noticed everything. The tremor in the candles. The way shadows pooled in corners. The faint smell of wet soil that refused to fade. Then she felt it. A hand on her shoulder. It was gentle. Familiar. The kind of touch a husband gives when passing behind his wife. A simple reassurance. A wordless presence. For half a heartbeat, relief flooded her chest. She almost leaned into it. Then the cold reached her bones. The temperature of that touch was not human. It sank through her skin instantly, spreading through muscle and blood. Her breath caught. Frost bloomed across her vision. The air tasted like river water. Molly turned slowly. No one stood behind her. The mourners nearby were watching her, confused. No one was close enough to reach her shoulder. Yet the pressure remained, 5 fingers resting there, unmoving. She looked down. A handprint was forming on her skin. Not bruised. Wet. Water soaked through her blouse, dripping onto the floor. Each drop hit the wood with a heavy, deliberate sound. The shape of the hand became clearer, darker, as if pressed from the inside of her body outward. Molly screamed. The touch vanished, but the cold did not. She collapsed forward, gasping. Several people rushed to help her, then recoiled when they felt the chill radiating from her skin. It was like touching ice left too long in a freezer, the kind that burns. "He touched me," Molly whispered. "He knows I'm here." The coffin answered with a soft thud. Not a knock. A shift. Something inside rolling gently from one side to the other. The mourners stared at the lid. No one wanted to open it. They understood instinctively that whatever lay inside was no longer a body waiting to be buried. It was something aware, something listening. Across the room, another woman cried out. She clutched her neck, eyes wide. A wet handprint bloomed there too. Then another appeared on a man's back. A third on someone's wrist. The touches spread through the room like a slow contagion, gentle, intimate, claiming. Each person marked felt the same thing. Recognition. Not anger. Not hunger. Recognition. As if Somchai were moving through them one by one, confirming their names, remembering their faces, saying goodbye in the only way he could still reach. The grandmother wept openly. "He's counting us," she said, making sure we're all here for his funeral. The coffin creaked again, softer this time, almost content. Molly looked at the wet handprint on her shoulder. The water refused to dry. It clung to her skin, cold and heavy, a signature that would not fade. And for the first time since the night began, she understood the truth settling into her chest. Somchai was not trying to escape. He was attending, watching, touching, confirming every witness to his death. Because when the funeral ended, he would know exactly who to take with him. Chapter 10. The second night. The second night arrived without sunset. No one remembered the sky growing dark. The light simply drained away from the world like water slipping from a cracked bowl. One moment the windows were gray. The next, they were black mirrors reflecting the inside of the house. And the house did not look the same anymore. The walls seemed closer, the ceiling lower, every corner held shadow too thick to be natural. The mourners felt it immediately, the understanding that whatever had begun the night before was not fading. It was deepening. No one had left, no one dared. The wet handprints still marked their skin, faint but stubborn, like bruises from a dream that refused to be dismissed. Every person carried the same fear silently. If I step outside, will he follow? The coffin sat at the center of the room, sealed and patient, until it wasn't. A slow scraping sound rose from within. Wood against wood. Not frantic, not violent, careful. The mourners froze. The sound continued, a deliberate shifting, like someone adjusting their position to get comfortable. The coffin lid trembled once, then again. Without warning, it slid open. No one touched it. The lid moved with the smooth certainty of something guided from the inside. It tilted and fell to the floor with a dull, final thud. The candles bent inward as if pulled by breath. Inside the coffin lay Somchai. He was back. His body rested neatly, hands folded across his chest. His funeral clothes were soaked. Water pooled beneath him, dark and shining. His hair clung to his face in muddy strands. His lips were slightly parted, and from them leaked a thin stream of river water that trickled over his chin. But his eyes were closed, as if sleeping. The room filled with a broken chorus of gasps and sobs. Molly crawled toward the coffin, shaking. She didn't want to look. She needed to look. Her fingers hovered above his face, trembling inches from his skin. "He came back," she whispered. Somchai inhaled. It was shallow, wet, unmistakable. The sound ripped through the room like thunder. Molly jerked backward. Several mourners screamed. The corpse's chest rose gently, then fell. A second breath followed, bubbling faintly. He was breathing. The grandmother collapsed, wailing prayers. A man tried to drag Molly away, but she couldn't stop staring. Somchai's eyelids fluttered slightly, as if dreaming. A low murmur escaped his throat, not words, just the sound of air moving through water. The smell of the river intensified. Rot, mud, something ancient and drowned. No one approached the coffin again. They watched from a distance as Somchai continued his slow, impossible breathing. Each inhale sounded heavier. Each exhale lingered too long, like it didn't want to leave his body. The candles burned blue. Time stretched. Minutes lost their shape. The corpse breathed and breathed and breathed, patient as tidewater. The mourners felt it sinking with their own lungs, dragging their rhythm into his. Several people began gasping in panic, unable to breathe normally. He was teaching the room how to breathe like the dead. At the edge of the altar, the portrait glistened. Water slid down the glass from the inside. Somchai's smiling face seemed brighter than ever, eyes shining with a calm that bordered on relief. He was no longer trying to return. He already had. And the second night had only just begun.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The Eyes That Opened. No one slept. They didn't dare close their eyes while he breathed. The sound filled the house in steady intervals, wet inhale, slow exhale, like a tide dragging itself across rotten shorelines. Every mourner sat frozen, lungs aching from the effort of not matching his rhythm. It felt dangerous to breathe when he did. It felt worse not to. Time no longer moved forward. It circled. The candles had burned so long their wax formed pale mountains around their bases. The flames were thin and vertical, unnaturally still. Even the smoke rose in straight lines. The house existed inside a pause. Molly had not looked away from the coffin. Her vision blurred, her eyes burned. Still she watched. She needed to be certain the chest kept rising. Needed to know whether each breath would be the last, or the beginning of something worse. Somchai inhaled again. This time the sound caught halfway. A choking flutter. His fingers twitched. It was small, barely a movement, but Molly saw it. Her heart slammed painfully in her chest. "Did you see?" she whispered. No one answered. They were all staring now. Somchai's hands shifted against his chest, fingers curling slightly as if testing the weight of air. A thin stream of water slid from his nostril and ran into his ear. His jaw trembled. Then his eyelids opened. Not quickly. Not with shock. They peeled back slowly, like something inside him had been waiting patiently for permission. His eyes were clear, bright, focused, and they locked directly onto Molly. The room disappeared for her. The mourners, the candles, the walls, all of it dissolved. There was only that gaze. Recognition burned in it, not confusion, not madness. Recognition. He knew her. Her name formed silently on his lips. No sound came out, only water bubbling faintly at the corners of his mouth. His chest did not rise again. The breathing stopped. But his eyes stayed open, watching. The silence that followed was unbearable. Several mourners clutched their throats instinctively, as if the absence of his breath had stolen theirs. A man fainted. Someone began praying in a hoarse whisper. Molly leaned closer despite herself. "Somchai," she breathed. His pupils shifted. Not to her face. To the room behind her. He was counting. His gaze moved from one mourner to the next with slow precision. Each person he looked at flinched as if struck. When his eyes met theirs, they felt the same cold touch from earlier return, not on their skin this time, but inside their chest. A mark without shape. A claim without words. When he finished, his eyes returned to Molly. And he smiled. Water spilled from his teeth. His lips moved again, forming a single phrase she read without hearing. "You buried me awake." The candles blew out. Every flame died at once, swallowed by a darkness so complete it erased the shape of their own bodies. In that blind void, the mourners heard something shift inside the coffin, a wet, deliberate movement, like a man sitting upright. No one screamed. Fear had gone past screaming. They sat in total blackness, listening to the sound of Somchai adjusting his posture, settling into awareness, his open eyes shining somewhere in the dark. Watching. Learning how to stand. Chapter 12. The man who stood outside his body. The darkness lasted too long. At first the mourners waited for their eyes to adjust. Darkness is supposed to thin with time. Shapes should return. Outlines should crawl back into existence. But this darkness did not behave like night. It behaved like depth. People could feel the size of the room disappear. Sound change. Breathing echoed strangely, as if the house had grown vast or hollow. Someone sobbed quietly, and the cry traveled too far before fading. It felt like they were sitting inside a well. Then a candle relit itself. The flame bloomed weakly, trembling, revealing the coffin. Somchai was sitting up. His back was straight. His hands rested calmly on his knees. His head tilted slightly, like a man listening to distant music. His eyes were open and shining in the dim light. But his body was still lying down. The corpse remained flat inside the coffin. The sitting figure hovered inches above it. A perfect copy. Water dripped from both. The mourners didn't understand what they were seeing at first. Their minds refused the shape of it. The air around the seated Somchai rippled gently, like heat rising from a road. He looked solid and unreal at the same time, a memory forced into flesh. Molly crawled backward until her shoulders hit the wall. The seated Somchai turned his head. He looked around the room slowly, studying every face. His expression wasn't rage, it wasn't sorrow. It was curiosity. Like a man waking in a place he did not remember choosing. When he spoke, his voice did not come from his mouth. It came from the walls, the floor, the inside of their ribs. I was awake. The corpse in the coffin remained still. The copy smiled faintly. I heard everything. The grandmother pressed her forehead to the floor, sobbing apologies. Others followed. The weight of guilt flooded the room like rising water. No one denied the truth anymore. The air itself carried confession. The seated Somchai stood. His feet touched the floor without sound. The moment he stepped away from the coffin, the candles bent toward him as if pulled by gravity. Shadows stretched in his direction, eager and obedient. The corpse did not move. It lay empty now. Not dead. Vacant. Somchai walked through the circle of mourners. Wherever he passed, the air froze. People felt him move through them, not around them. His shape overlapped their bodies like a cold memory being pressed into warm flesh. When he reached the door, he stopped. For a moment, the house held its breath. He turned back toward Molly. His eyes softened. Not forgiveness. Not hatred. Recognition. You closed the lid, the voice inside the room said gently. Molly screamed. The door opened by itself. Night air rushed in, thick with the smell of the river. Somchai stepped outside. His form thinned immediately, stretching into shadow, dissolving into the darkness beyond the threshold. The candles straightened. The house exhaled. Inside the coffin lay only a body again. Still. Silent. Empty of watching. The mourners stared at the open door. No one moved to close it. They understood instinctively that something had left, and something would return. Because footprints appeared on the floor. Wet. Leading back toward the coffin. One by one. As if the man who walked out was already walking home.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13: The Truth That Refused to Stay Buried. The door remained open until morning. No one closed it. No one crossed its frame. The river air flowed in and out of the house in slow breaths, carrying the smell of mud and something older, something that did not belong to the living world. The footprints on the floor never dried. They stayed dark and glossy, reflecting candlelight like fresh ink. The body inside the coffin looked smaller now. Not physically smaller. Emptier. The face that had once terrified them with open eyes was calm again. Lips sealed, skin gray and waxy. It looked like a proper corpse, the kind people understood how to mourn. But no one felt relief. They knew better than to trust appearances. The grandmother finally spoke what everyone had been circling in silence. We buried him alive. The sentence did not shock the room. It settled. Like dust falling onto a surface already dirty. Molly didn't cry. Her tears had ended somewhere in the second night. She sat with her hands in her lap, staring at Somchai's face. Her voice came out flat. He was breathing when they wrapped him. No one interrupted. The doctor said he wouldn't survive the road to the city. He said it was mercy. Her lips trembled once, then steadied. He said it was kinder to let him go at home. The room listened to the confession like a courtroom that had already reached its verdict. I heard him, Molly whispered. When they closed the lid, I heard him move. A low sound spread through the mourners, not surprise. Not accusation, recognition. Several faces crumpled, others turned away. They had all heard something that night. A shift, a knock, a mistake they chose not to name. We told ourselves it was the wood, a man muttered. We told ourselves it was grief, said another. The grandmother shook her head slowly. The dead forgive, she said, the buried do not. The coffin creaked. Everyone froze. The sound came from deep inside the wood. Not from movement but from pressure, like something remembering how to push. The corpse did not stir. Its chest did not rise. Yet the air thickened again, heavy with the sensation of attention returning. The portrait above the altar fogged. Water beaded along the inside of the glass, gathering at Somchai's lips. His smile faded. His expression shifted into something quieter, sadder, understanding. The mourners felt it pass through them at once. He knew. Not just the act. The decision. The silence that followed. The way they chose comfort over certainty. The door slammed shut. No wind touched it. The impact shook the walls. Candles flared high, flames screaming upward. Several mourners cried out and fell to their knees. The house felt sealed now, not closed for safety, but locked from the outside. Molly stared at the coffin. "I never opened it again," she whispered. "I told myself he was gone." The corpse's lips parted slightly. Not breathing. Not speaking. Just open. Like the beginning of a word that would never finish. The candles dimmed. And in that thick, suffocating quiet, every mourner understood the final truth settling into the room. Somchai was not haunting them because he died. He was haunting them because they decided when he should. And the dead do not accept decisions made on their behalf. Chapter 14: The Death That Chose a Body. The house no longer belonged to the living. Everyone felt it the moment the door slammed shut. The air changed texture, thicker, resistant, like trying to move inside deep water. The candles no longer flickered naturally. Their flames leaned toward the coffin in quiet devotion, as if acknowledging a new center of gravity. Somchai did not need to move. The room revolved around him. Molly sat closest. She had stopped shaking. Terror had burned through her and left something hollow. Something ready. Her eyes never left the slight opening of his lips. She was waiting for the word he could not finish. The grandmother whispered hoarsely, "He cannot leave without balance." No one asked what that meant. The answer already hung in the air. Something had been taken. Something would be returned. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost crawled along the wooden floorboards in delicate white veins, spreading outward from the coffin. Every breath the mourners took turned visible. Their bodies reacted instinctively, muscles tightening, hearts racing, but no one ran. They understood. Running would choose them faster. Somchai's corpse sat upright. This time the movement was violent. The body snapped forward with a wet crack of joints. Several mourners screamed. His head hung loosely for a moment, chin touching his chest, water dripping from his mouth. Then it lifted. His eyes remained closed. But the room filled with sight. Everyone felt watched from inside their own skull. A pressure built behind their eyes, like fingers pressing outward. Memories surfaced uninvited. The funeral night, the hurried wrapping, the silence after the knock. Each mourner saw themselves standing beside the coffin, choosing not to open it. The corpse turned its head toward Molly. Her body went rigid. A voice entered her chest, not her ears, and spoke with perfect calm. "Dead must stand." Molly gasped. Her mouth opened, but the next breath was not hers. It came from deeper, colder lungs. Her spine arched violently. The mourners scrambled back as she rose to her feet in a single unnatural motion. Her eyes rolled white. When they lowered again, they were not empty. They were focused. Clear. Somchai's corpse slumped back into the coffin like an abandoned shell. At the same moment, Molly straightened. Water poured from her lips in a thin stream. Her shoulders relaxed. She looked around the room with quiet familiarity, the gaze of a man recognizing his home after a long absence. The grandmother began screaming. "No, no, that is not the way." Molly smiled gently. But it was Somchai's smile. He touched his own chest, testing the weight of breath. His fingers flexed. He inhaled deeply, and the room felt the air leave them to fill him. The cold receded from the floor, gathering into his body like mist drawn into lungs. He looked at the coffin, at the empty vessel he once occupied, then back at the mourners. "I stood at my funeral," he said softly through Molly's mouth. "Now someone stands for me." The voice was calm, grateful, terrifyingly reasonable. He stepped toward the door. This time it opened for him without resistance. Warm air rushed in from outside, carrying the distant sound of insects and river water. The world beyond the house continued as if nothing had happened. Somchai paused at the threshold. He turned once more to the mourners. "Balance," he said gently. Then he walked out wearing Molly's body. The door closed behind him. Inside the coffin lay Somchai's original corpse, already collapsing inward, skin sinking, features dissolving like wet paper. Within seconds it no longer resembled a man. It was just a shape. Then even that was gone. The coffin held nothing. The house held silence. And every mourner understood the final horror settling into their bones. The funeral had ended. But the guest had left alive.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15: The Chair That Waits. The house was abandoned before sunrise. No one discussed it. No one needed to. When the first gray light crept over the river, the mourners left in silence, stepping around the empty coffin as if it were a hole in the floor. They did not carry anything with them. No candles. No portrait. No offerings. They left the funeral exactly as it stood. No one wanted to risk taking a piece of it home. The chair in the last row remained. No one touched it on the way out. For weeks afterward, Ban Klong village pretended the house no longer existed. Children were warned away from the riverside path. Fishermen avoided casting nets near the shore. At night, people closed their windows tightly and spoke in hushed voices, as if sound itself could travel and be recognized. Because sometimes, after midnight, someone was seen walking along the river. A woman in funeral white. Her steps were slow and steady. Her clothes dripped endlessly, though the ground beneath her never grew wet. Witnesses said she walked like a person learning her body for the first time, testing balance, adjusting breath. And her shadow was wrong. It walked a half step behind her. Not attached. Following. The villagers understood without speaking. Somchai had not taken Molly. He had borrowed her. And debts are never erased. Only delayed. Years passed. The house rotted. The roof sagged. Vines crawled through the windows like fingers reclaiming space. Still, no one entered. Even thieves avoided it. Even animals circled wide. The air around the building felt sealed, thick with memory. Until one night, a group of boys dared each other to go inside. Youth does not believe in warnings. It believes in victory over them. They pushed open the swollen door and stepped into dust and darkness. Their flashlights shook as beams cut through the stale air. The house smelled dry now. Abandoned, almost harmless. Almost. The coffin was gone. The altar was gone. Only one piece of furniture remained untouched. The last chair. It sat in the exact position it had years before, facing a space where a coffin should be. The wood was wet, not decayed, wet. Fresh droplets clung to the seat. One boy laughed nervously. Someone spilled water, he whispered. No one believed him. They heard breathing. Slow. Measured. Not from a direction. From the room itself. The beams of their flashlights flickered. Shadows stretched and twisted along the walls. And there, in the corner of their vision, never directly where the light pointed, a figure sat in the chair. A man in funeral clothes. Smiling gently. Watching. Every time they tried to look straight at him, he was gone. But when they looked away, they felt his gaze settle warmly on their backs. Patient as tidewater. One of the boys whispered, Is this your funeral? The breathing stopped. The house listened. The chair creaked under invisible weight. And a voice answered from everywhere at once. It is yours. The flashlights died. In the darkness, the boys heard wet footsteps rise from the chair, walking toward them. Choosing. And the house, faithful and quiet, made room for new mourners. Because some funerals never end. They only wait for the next guest to arrive. The villagers say the house still stands by the river. The last chair in the room is always wet, though no one touches it. And if you step inside at midnight, you may see a man sitting there, smiling, as if waiting for the funeral to begin. Some deaths end with burial. Others are only beginning.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.